Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the Bitcoin price. Because today's been a pretty eventful day. When it comes to the price action, we've seen a early morning rejection at the start of April. That basically pushed prices down lower to the bottom of our triangle here, of which it decided to bounce back up, at least as of this point. It is up roughly 3% from the bottom. And exactly how we're profiting from this with the bots, I'll talk about later in the video, because it's honestly really quite simple. But a lot of people have been asking me, is the bull market now canceled? Are we done for? Are things only going to start crumbling down from here? Because there's so much happening in the geopolitical landscape. And I'd like to start out with this right here. The US government transferred 30,000 Bitcoin, where $2.1 billion seized from Silk Road to Coinbase. Now, I can see a little community note that most people can't see just quite yet that says only 2,000 Bitcoin were right now moved. But there could have definitely been some sort of insider trade here, where somebody knew that these Bitcoin were gonna be moved, which would set in motion some sort of cascading Bitcoin price trickle. And perhaps institutions, because if we're taking a look, a lot of institutions are still having pretty massive outflows and are seeing a lot of crunches right now. Perhaps these institutions also know exactly what is coming when it comes to government selling, that perhaps is making them decide this way as of this point. Just some speculation though, because it's pretty coincidental that the price sees such a rejection just before it's announced that the government is looking to probably sell a whole bunch of Bitcoin again. Obviously the prices now fall down that low because who gives a crap at the end of the day, but it is something to keep in mind. Anyway guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure you go ahead and press that like button on this video. I am right now running a little crypto giveaway of sorts just for fun. It's over in the Telegram if you haven't checked it out yet. Just a couple $100, just for fun. Because everything is going down, I thought we might as well have a little bit of fun somewhere. Well, I have to pay it, so it's not as fun for me, but I hope that somebody else is gonna find it fun. Well, 10 people, so, because it's been, whew, this is some negativity right here. I mean, 𝗓𝗓 was just launched a few hours ago. It's definitely putting the average up a little bit here. Even in the 100 to 200 category, it's mostly red, man. Anyway, once we take a look at Bitcoin's price, what becomes quite apparent is just how long we've been trading within this, what I'm gonna call 68 and a bit to $72,000 region that we finally decided to break out of. I've stated on multiple occasions before over on Twitter just how much Bitcoin seems to like 69. Because it's been clinging to it like crazy. But anyway, the fact that this happened puts a little bit of pressure on the downside. And what I mean with that is, whereas before the range was this box right here, right now, because of this breakout towards the downside, the range has ever so slightly increased, where I consider the box to be slightly larger now. I think it can be zoomed in ever so slightly here, but the box has basically now become this entire region that we are playing around in. And so even though generally speaking over the past couple of weeks here, it's been up only, because again, we are still respecting the trend line. If you do start zooming in a little bit, you can actually notice, well, that's kind of working the way from both sides. We've not really had a massive breakout towards the upside nor towards the downside. It's mostly just been converging, waiting for any sort of decisive move. And I like the box to kind of put into perspective that indeed, we are not really leaving the range at all. We're kind of just narrowing it down. At least we were until we had some breakout of the box I just provided, but still relatively, it's not that crazy of a move. This is like I described in the previous video, just looking for some liquidity, just hunting. Because when we're looking at the numbers, right when that happened, $150 million worth of positions got liquidated in like an hour. And to put it into perspective, the level where we get confident again of just gains, at least to me, is as long as we do not break this trend line, and as soon as we get above this, I'm gonna say as of this point, resistance right now. So about the $68.5 thousand level. Once we get above there, I'd say we're back in the clear, as long as we do not break through this. And one thing many people are forgetting is that these dips, at the end of the day, are only very harsh if you're already all in. Because take a look at the history here. If you just kept buying the dip, especially at moments which so clearly mark a good dip opportunity, if you just kept on buying at these levels, you can kind of see how quickly that would have turned into a very profitable hobby there. For some reason, it's not really working, but let's just say on average, the gains could have easily been, oh, I thought it was a mosquito, but it was not. Let's say 15 or so, 10 at least % per one of these moves. Now that is of course if you were holding on for a little bit, but it's to just put it into perspective. I've explained to you guys before the strategy when it comes to RSI as well. In bull markets, it's actually not that hard to trade solely based on a higher time frame RSI. Well, that's kind of funny. I've not looked at the longer term version of this chart in a long time. We just drew something on here for fun a long time ago. And it's kind of funny where a lot of people fail to realize if you zoom out, this is just the 2021 cycle put on top of 2023. And I put this in months ago because you can see it's deviating from it. So I probably put it in maybe in October of last year. But you can see just how accurately it's kind of following it, and that at some point it just decides to go exponential, just decides to go crazy. But for some reason, people find it really, really hard to zoom all the way out and realize that back in 2021, for example, also people were having the same predicament where they weren't sure if it was really going to go on and continue, and they got afraid at dips. For example, this price movement right here, it was 30% down, right? People get scared, but ultimately it was a very, very good opportunity to buy the dip. And that's kind of what I keep seeing in scenarios related to the one we're in right now, where from a probability point of view, it just makes sense to keep going for it, even though some slight lower breaks would also not be too crazy. But let's say we wanted to be really, really safe, and we did not want to go for any DCA strategy. We just wanted a one entry fits all. We could, for example, try to buy ourselves the confirming candle right here with a stop loss relatively tight, for example, right below here. We give it a little bit of leeway in case of a little wick like right there, but we're still able to catch it if it's a massive push downwards. Because that perhaps might mean we're going to go back to these previous levels, right? And that would obviously be not too nice. Because 59,000 is one of my major buying areas, as I described in the previous videos. But obviously, if we can prevent going from 64 all the way down to 59, that could be nice, depending, of course, as I said, on what your strategy is. Because the way I work with my bots, it's honestly not that big a deal. And by the way, when it comes to the S&P, for example, it could very well be that that also sets a precedent for where the Bitcoin price goes. I mean, it was kind of bearish right here. It was bearish over the last couple of days. And we're taking a look at Bitcoin. Yeah, indeed, I guess from the 21st, where the S&P turned negative, it was a little bit negative for a while. Right now, the S&P turned negative again. It is a little bit negative. And it could, of course, also be that people are speculating on either these job reports or the unemployment rate, or perhaps on Powell's speech over the next few days. I don't think they're speculating on inflation this much beforehand, but it could be. Could be. One additional thing that a lot of people are looking into, and that I saw a lot of comparisons with over on Twitter, was people saying that this, basically this, is going to repeat itself. Like I just drew those ghost candles already in. They basically said we had a massive rally upwards, the initial rally of the bull run, then 2 weeks of downside, a third week of uncertainty, when the fourth and forward weeks of just crazy pumps. Well, right now, again, we had some crazy burst, 2 weeks of downside, 1 week that was, I guess, from that perspective, slightly too bullish, but still considerably uncertain because it did not just blow past all these previous prices. And I guess if this ends up being a green candle over the next few days, perhaps it's kind of confirmed. Perhaps it could be really bullish. And again, so anything from a longer term perspective, if you look at the weekly, whatever, it's looking quite bullish. And I think we will all agree that for anybody that's trying to make major choices on the Bitcoin price, they're all looking at the weekly time frame. And it's still looking extremely solid. Yes, you might consider this to be a very, very bearish feat, but the week is not closed. So this means almost nothing. And again, consider that back here, for example, in February of 2021, and right here in January of 2021, we also had some very scary looking candles, but ultimately it ended up pushing Bitcoin up and up only. Point being though, the only thing we're thinking about here is there a major halving play going on? Because we know ultimately with the inflows from the institutions, with the gold inflows, it's very hard for this to come crumbling down. But the question is, are some guys making a massive halving trade? Well, right now they're starting to sell off because the halving is in 2 weeks from now. Is that what's at play? Is that why, for example, this right now, the price is deviating from before? And is that why we can't have a massive green candle right here? That is something I am interested in finding out, but the answer to that is quite difficult because we'll only see over the next few weeks if people are really buying the rumors, selling the news when it comes to the halving. Because one last thing I'll say, and this is not the chart I was looking for, but it will do, is that taking a look at history, Bitcoin has never pumped as quickly as it has right now. But after hitting that all-time high, it's usually a pretty quick journey towards a new all-time high. So right now I've got my bots operating in a manner which I described to you guys a long time ago, but I changed a couple of small settings. So again, if you've not got an account on any trading platform just quite yet, I personally use Bybit, OKX, those two I use the most. Bybit for all my casual trading, and OKX mostly for my bot trading strategies. Again, links to both of these will be down below. And if you can't use these in the country that you're trying to trade in, there's Deepcoin, which you can use with a VPN. So you just get the VPN with a link down below. I use NordVPN for that. And then you can trade on DeepCoin because they don't require KYC, they don't require anything. But basically, I decided to kind of redo it. I literally just opened it today, as you can see right here, the 2nd of February, just a few hours ago. And it's still extremely relevant to anybody watching, but I decided to change it up a little. And what I did was, because we're getting towards a little bit more volatile of a market than we saw before, and because the prices when I opened the previous bots was at like what, 30,000 or so, and right now we're at 66. Instead of doing grid bots, which basically long and short, I still wanted to keep mostly long positions. And a grid bot, what it basically does is you set a range from, let's say, 65,000 to 69,000. It's gonna just open longs till it takes profit. Then it's gonna open shorts, basically as prices go higher, so that it eventually takes profit on the way down. Then it tries to go back up and back down. A lot of maintenance on that. For longs only, it's honestly not that hard as long as you believe you're in a bull market and as long as you don't go all in because you need to be able to buy dips. And the bot basically just helps you buy different dips. I opened it today and I put, well, at least the initial trade here is a $250, but I have in total given the bot $5,000 to trade with. Obviously, it'll almost never use it, but I've just given it in case it just wants to keep buying the dip lower. And in this account, I also made sure to have a couple $1,000s extra for in case Bitcoin has such a massive crash, you know, it goes to, for example, 35,000, that I really have to start buying manually to make sure I don't lose all my money. But for some reason, every single time I talk about bots, people don't seem to like it. But I've shown you before just how profitable it is. Here, for example, on Bybit, I told you I'm entering right now with $300. I showed you it that day when I did it. And I mean, they're maxed out because Bybit is not the best for these bots, which is why I use OKX for the most part. But you can see I put $100 in, and $105 in, and with ever increasing matters of risk. But this one is up 160, 165, and almost $300. Now, why is this riskier? Because there's only 10 additions that you can make. So you have to be a little bit more vigilant in adding your own margin to make sure this liquidation price never gets hit. And that basically means you have to add potentially a little bit of money to the bot to make sure that once it gets to, you know, 35,000 or some, that it has enough money to basically get this price to either zero or just far enough away. I don't think it's gonna ever go to 31,000 again, but if it gets close, you know, you don't wanna lose the initial money that you put in, which in this case is only $100. So I'd still be fine because we would made more profit, but we'd still prefer to not lose that, right? Matter of fact, right now, just looking at it, because I've actually not looked at this ever. We only have $40 basically riding on this. So it's actually significantly low. And I think I did this to prove to anybody that even with $100, it can go a pretty long way because as you can see, $100 is now $280 in profit. Well, actually it's 320, but the trade that we're in right now is in a big loss because obviously prices went down significantly. And because we can only open 10 trades, our average price cannot get as low as we'd like it to be because our average holding cost, you see, was actually very, very significantly high. Whereas on OKX, right now, I changed a couple of settings, like I said, from buying every 1% down, we're now buying every 2% down. But I think it's actually nice to just keep two bots open, one with the 1% down, one with the 2% down. The 1% being obviously a lot more active and most likely will bring you way, way more profit. But it could, for example, be with a smaller size. And then the 2% being obviously less trades, but a little bit safer over the longer term, especially when the market's a little bit more volatile like this. Then again, volatility is your friend. Let's say we open our initial trade at 71,000. The goal is to buy as many different times on your way down to 64 so that the moment the price comes back up, that you take profit. And that's exactly what this one has done, I think twice already today. So I bought somewhere, I put $260 in. If the price goes 2% down from this level, from 66,000, it's gonna buy again. If the price goes 2% down, it's gonna buy again. And then once it goes up and it reaches my very, very tiny profit marker, it's gonna sell the trade, give us the profit, and that's why it's so juicy. Anyway, don't sleep on this. I think it's literally one of the best ways to trade crypto in a bull market, because you're basically doing this anyway, but now the bot can automate it for you. If you know how to do it, it's extremely powerful. Most of my friends I think are doing it, and it sounds kind of crazy, but it's making people literally hundreds of thousands of dollars every single month. Obviously you need some money to do that, but even just $100, for example, like I showed you just now on Bybit, it goes a pretty long way. But obviously there's risks involved, like I explained earlier. Just it's some food for thought because it makes things easier. You can also manually do this because at the end of the day, all we are doing is buying, for example, right here. Let's say we buy it right now. Right here we buy. All we're doing is looking for an entry point, and then as the price gets, let's say 2% lower or whatever, you know, so right there we calculate, we're gonna buy again, so we put another order in. You don't need any bots for this, you can just do this manually. So let's say we wanna, again, once the price Goes down another 2%. Want to buy again, we just put the manual order right there to buy again with, for example, a very tiny increased amount. So for example, 105, so let's say a 5% increase in our buy size, going from $100 to $105 buy, for example. Hopefully you guys get how this would work manually. But yeah, everything's in the description down below. Check out OKX, check out Bybit if that's what you prefer, or check out DeepCoin if you just want to trade and you can't use anything because you're in a country that doesn't allow for it, and that's about it.